The gun pressed against Dami's spine, a cold circle of metal biting into her feverish skin, while Jae's body pinned her against the silk wallpaper of the penthouse hallway. His weight crushed the air from her lungs, his breath coming in ragged, hot bursts against the sensitive curve of her neck. Silence hung heavy in the corridor, broken only by the rhythmic sound of blood dripping. Drip, drip. It was his blood, and yes, she was the one who had spilled it. She had slapped him, a full-force, open-palm strike that had split his lip and echoed like a gunshot through the empty house. He had tried to lock the doors. He had tried to cage her again, and Dami was done being a bird in a gilded cage. "You never listen," Jae growled. The sound vibrated through his broad chest and into hers, a low rumble of a predator losing its patience. His free hand, the one not holding the gun, tangled violently in her braids, yanking her head back, forcing her throat to arch, exposing the pulse that fluttered there like a trapped butterfly. "I told you not to leave the penthouse. I told you it wasn't safe out there. And I told you," Dami hissed, her voice trembling not with fear, but with a terrifying rush of adrenaline. She ground her hips back against him, a deliberate, dangerous friction, just to feel the instant reaction of his body, just to feel him harden against her lower back, just to prove her point. "That I am not your prisoner, Jae." The gun traced a slow, terrifying line down her spine. "Metal on skin. Danger en désir. You're my wife," he whispered, his lips grazing the shell of her ear. "In my world, that is the same thing." He spun her around with a speed that made the room blur, slamming her back against the wall hard enough to knock the breath out of her. The gun was no longer at her spine. It was pressed firmly under her chin, forcing her to look up at him. Jae looked like a fallen angel who had crawled his way out of hell just to haunt her. His tuxedo shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing the sheen of sweat on his collarbone. His eyes, usually so cold, so calculated, were black with a rage that terrified her. But beneath the rage was something else, something darker, something that made her thighs clench involuntarily. 3 months. 3 months of this arranged marriage hell. 3 months of a violent, silent dance where they circled each other like wounded predators in a cage, waiting to see who would bite first. They wanted to destroy each other. They wanted to devour each other. "I should kill you," Jae whispered, his voice rough with restraint. His thumb, stained with a smear of his own blood, brushed over her bottom lip. "You're going to get yourself killed anyway with this stubbornness. Maybe I should just save my enemies the trouble." Dami stared right into the abyss of his eyes. She didn't blink. "Then do it." She opened her mouth and took his bloody thumb inside, sucking it. The reaction was instantaneous. She watched his pupils dilate, swallowing the iris. She watched the mask of the cold Mafia Don fracture. Or, she mumbled around his thumb, her eyes heavy-lidded, "You can make love to me. But make a choice, my dear Mafia husband, because I am exhausted of this game." The gun clattered to the floor. The sound was deafening, but neither of them looked down. Jae's mouth crashed onto hers, a collision of teeth and rage, and 3 months of desperate, starving hunger. It wasn't a kiss, it was a war. She bit his already split lip, tasting the copper tang of his blood, mixing it with her own saliva. He groaned into her mouth, a sound of agony, like she was killing him slowly. "I hate you," she gasped as his large hands found the hem of her dress, hiking it up her thighs with impatient, tearing motions. "I hate you more," he growled, lifting her effortlessly until her legs wrapped around his waist, pinning her high against the wall. But their bodies had clearly never received the memo about the hatred. If you want to know how a stubborn woman brought Seoul's most dangerous, lethal Mafia Don to his knees, and why they can't decide if they want to murder each other or destroy each other with pleasure, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this story is about to get very filthy. Now, let's rewind. Let's go back 3 months to the moment the trap was sprung. The limousine smelled like expensive leather, stale air, and her father's fear. Dami sat on the plush seat, her arms crossed, watching the skyline of Atlanta disappear through the tinted windows, replaced by the road to the private airfield. She had been given exactly 12 hours' notice. "Pack your things, Dami. Just the essentials. We're leaving." She had asked if it was a vacation. Her father had said no. He said she was getting married. He said the family needed this. Now, sitting across from him, seeing the sweat bead on his forehead, she felt the bile rise in her throat. He's powerful, her father said, his voice shaking. He wouldn't meet her eyes. He kept fidgeting with his cufflinks. The Park family controls most of East Asia's shipping and underground distribution. This alliance, it will save us. Dami laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Save us. You mean selling me will save you? It's not like that, Dami, he pleaded. It is exactly like that. She held up a perfectly manicured hand, cutting him off. Her voice was deadly calm, masking the hurricane inside her chest. Let's call this exactly what it is, Dad. You messed up. You gambled what you didn't have, you got in debt with the wrong people, and now you are trading your only daughter like cattle to settle the score. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was an admission of guilt. The wedding happened 2 days later in Seoul. There was no time to run, no time to plan an escape. Her passport had been confiscated the moment they landed. She was a prisoner in a 5-star hotel until the moment they shoved her into the white dress. 500 guests she didn't know filled the grand hall. 500 pairs of eyes judging her, analyzing the foreign bride, the payment for a debt. The music swelled, a haunting orchestral piece that felt more like a funeral march than a wedding procession. She walked down the aisle in a gown she hadn't chosen, toward a man she had never met. And then she saw him. Jae Park looked like God's apology for creating the devil. He was devastating. A lethal beauty wrapped in a bespoke black tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. He stood at the altar with a stillness that was unnatural. His face was sharp angles and cold indifference, his hair perfectly styled, his jaw set in stone. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. They were dark, bottomless pits that had seen too much death. Hands that looked elegant, but had undoubtedly caused most of that death. He didn't smile when she reached him. He didn't offer a reassuring nod. He didn't even take her hand until the priest instructed him to. He just looked at her, a cold, calculating stare that swept over her body, assessing her value, calculating her worth against the debt her father owed. I do, he said. His voice was a baritone devoid of emotion. I do, Dami whispered, sealing her fate. The kiss was perfunctory, a lie performed for the audience. His lips barely brushed hers, dry, firm, and retreating before she could even register the temperature of his skin. The reception was a blur of fake smiles and whispers in a language Dami was only just beginning to learn. Everyone danced. Everyone drank champagne and pretended this wasn't a business transaction between criminal empires. Jay stood beside her, his hand resting on the small of her back, not in affection, but in possession, a warning to others. This is mine. When the cameras turned away, he leaned in close enough that she could smell his cologne, a mix of sandalwood, crisp mountain air, and something dangerously expensive that made her stomach flip traitorously. Let me be clear about our arrangement, Mrs. Park, he said. His English was perfect, his accent barely noticeable, smooth like velvet over gravel. Dami stiffened, looking up at him. You will live in my home, he continued, his gaze fixed on a guest across the room, not even looking at her. You will attend events as required. You will play the part of the doting wife in public. You will smile, you will nod, and you will look pretty. He turned to her then, his eyes narrowing. But in private, you stay out of my way. You do not enter my study. You do not ask about my business. And let us be very clear about the bedroom. I won't touch you. You won't warm my bed. We are business partners, nothing more. Understood? The dismissal in his voice made her blood boil. It made her skin burn with humiliation. He spoke to her like she was an employee, an inconvenient pet he had acquired. Crystal clear, Dami said, keeping her voice light, sugary sweet. Though I should warn you, husband, I'm not very good at following orders. Something flickered in Jay's expression, a microscopic crack in the ice. Amusement? Annoyance? You'll follow mine, he stated simply. We'll see about that, she replied. The first week, Dami tested the boundaries like a child finding the edges of a new prison. The penthouse was a masterpiece of modern architecture, cold marble, black steel, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Han River. It was beautiful. It was soulless. It was Jae. Dami decided to bring some chaos into the void. She wandered the penthouse at all hours of the night, her footsteps echoing on the marble. She rearranged his perfectly organized study while he was out, moving books, shifting the pens, turning his chair slightly to the left. Just enough to be annoying. Just enough to let him know she was there. She played Afro beats and R&B loud enough to shake the minimalist art on the walls while he tried to conduct terrifying business calls in the next room. Each small rebellion was met with a clenched jaw, a tightened fist resting on the dinner table, a dark look that promised consequences he never delivered. He was treating her like a ghost, hoping that if he ignored her, she would fade into the background. But Dami didn't fade. She burned brighter. It was the second week when the game shifted. It was the second week when she discovered his weakness. She had been walking from the master bathroom, which she had commandeered because the water pressure was better, to the guest room where she slept. God forbid the great Jae Park share his king-size bed. She was wrapped in a towel. Just a towel. As she stepped into the hallway, the towel slipped. Not completely. Just enough. The fabric dipped, revealing the curve of her breast, the deep bronze of her skin against the white terry cloth, the long, toned length of her thigh. She could have fixed it immediately. A modest wife would have shrieked and covered up. But Dami didn't. Jae was coming out of his study, phone in hand, probably stepping out to tell her to turn down the music again. He froze. The air left the corridor. His eyes, usually so disciplined, tracked a drop of water rolling down her dark skin, tracing the curve of her collarbone, disappearing into the valley between her breasts. His gaze traveled lower, to the exposed thigh, to the wet footprints she left on the floor. His hands fisted at his sides. He gripped the phone so hard Dami thought the screen would shatter. His knuckles went white. "Cover yourself," he ordered. His voice was rough, a stark contrast to his usual cool tone. It sounded like gravel grinding together. Dami smirked, leaning casually against the wall. "It's my house too, isn't it? Or are you going to give me a dress code along with the schedule?" "Lola," he started, using her middle name, a warning. She stepped closer, close enough that the heat radiating off him was palpable, close enough that he could probably see the outline of her nipples through the damp, clinging fabric. "What's wrong, mafia husband?" she whispered, tilting her head. "Afraid you might actually want a wife?" Jae looked like he was about to snap. His jaw worked, grinding his teeth. He didn't say a word. He turned on his heel, strode back into his study, and slammed the door. Click! The lock engaged. Dami stood in the hallway, victorious. But then she heard it. Through the heavy wood of the door, she heard a sharp intake of breath. The sound of something heavy hitting the desk. A low, frustrated groan that sounded like a man in pain. 20 minutes later, she heard the shower in his private bathroom turn on. It ran for a long time. Dami smiled. Game on. After that night, the dynamic changed. Dami realized that Jae wasn't indifferent. He was terrified. He was a man holding on to his control by a thread, and she was holding the scissors. Every morning, she started doing yoga in the living room. She timed it perfectly for when he drank his espresso. She wore sports bras that left nothing to the imagination and tiny shorts that clung to her curves. She would bend, stretch, and arch her back, holding the poses for agonizingly long seconds. She could feel his eyes on her from the kitchen island. She didn't look at him, but she heard the porcelain cup clink unsteadily against the saucer. She heard his breathing change. She started wearing silk robes around the house, the belt tied loosely so that the fabric fell open when she reached for a glass of water, or when she sat on the couch to apply cocoa butter to her legs. She would sit there during his business calls, slowly rubbing the lotion into her calves, her thighs, her skin gleaming under the penthouse lights. Jae was unraveling. One evening, he was on a video conference with his lieutenants. Dami walked into the frame in the background, wearing one of his oversized button-down shirts and nothing else. She poured a glass of wine, stretched lazily, and walked out. Jae ended the call abruptly. He marched into the kitchen where she was sipping her wine. "You're doing this on purpose," he accused, his voice low and dangerous. "Doing what?" Dami asked innocently, running a finger around the rim of her glass. "Existing. Like this. Tormenting me." I'm just living, Jae. If my existence torments you, maybe you should ask yourself why. He stepped into her personal space, crowding her against the marble counter. You think this is a game? You think because I haven't touched you, I can't? I think, she whispered, looking up through her lashes, that you are a coward. I think you made a bet with yourself that you wouldn't touch the merchandise, and you're afraid of losing. He gripped the edge of the counter on either side of her hips, trapping her. I'm not afraid of anything. Then why are your hands shaking? He looked down. His hands were trembling. He pushed away from the counter violently, as if she were made of fire. Go to your room, Dami. Or what? Go. She caught him once, late at night, standing in her open doorway while she pretended to sleep. The hallway light cast a long shadow over her bed. He stood there for 10 minutes, silent as a grave, just watching the rise and fall of her chest, watching her sleep. Then he disappeared. Minutes later, she heard his shower turn on again. She heard the water hitting the tiles. And if she strained her ears, she heard the low, guttural moans of a man finding release the only way he allowed himself to. She heard her name on his lips. Dami. Dami. It sounded like a curse. It sounded like a prayer. After the third week, the dam began to crack. Dami was invited to an exclusive underground party by one of the few friends she had managed to make in Seoul. She dressed for war. She wore a black dress that shouldn't have been legal. The neckline plunged dangerously low, showcasing her skin, and the slit up the side climbed so high it nearly reached her hip bone. It was backless. It was tight. It was a weapon. She walked into the living room, her heels clicking on the floor. Jae was pouring a whiskey. He turned, and the glass stopped halfway to his mouth. His eyes swept over her, darkening instantly from brown to black. He set the glass down. Hard. You're not leaving the house dressed like that, he said. It wasn't a request. Dami checked her reflection in the hallway mirror, adjusting an earring. Watch me. She tried to walk past him toward the elevator. He moved faster than a striking cobra. He caught her wrist and spun her around, pinning her against the front door, his arms braced on either side of her head, blocking her exit. I said no. And I said, watch me. She looked up, defying him. Unless you're planning to physically stop me? Are you going to wrestle me to the floor? Jae? Ruin my makeup? Don't push me, Dami. Why? She trailed a manicured finger down the front of his shirt, feeling the heat radiating off his chest, feeling his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Afraid you might break that precious vow of yours? Afraid you might actually touch your wife and admit that you want to? You have no idea what you are playing with, he growled, leaning down until his nose brushed against hers. His breath smelled of expensive whiskey and mint. You think I'm a civilized man? You think because I wear suits and drink aged scotch that I am not a monster? Show me, she whispered. He leaned down further, his lips brushing the shell of her ear, sending shivers cascading down her spine. If I touch you, he whispered, the words vibrating against her skin, I won't stop. I will bend you over the nearest surface, and I will make you beg. I will mark every inch of your skin with my teeth, so that everyone in this city knows exactly who you belong to. I will ruin you for any other man. Is that what you want? Dami's breath hitched. Heat pooled low in her belly, a sudden, sharp ache. Maybe, she breathed. He pulled back to look at her. For a terrifying, electrifying second, she thought he was going to do it. She thought he was going to rip the dress off her right there in the foyer. But then the mask slammed back into place. He pushed away from the door, his hands shaking violently. He turned his back to her. Go, he said, his voice strained. Or whatever you want. Get yourself killed for all I care. Just get out of my sight. Dami stared at his back for a moment, her heart racing. She was frustrated. She was aroused. She was furious. She stomped out into the elevator, pressing the button with more force than necessary. But when she came home that night, laughing on the phone with her friend, her heels dangling from her fingers, the lights were off. Jae was waiting in the dark, sitting in the armchair, facing the door like a demon waiting to collect a soul. Did you have fun? His voice was deceptively calm, slicing through the darkness. Dami jumped, clutching her chest. She squinted into the gloom. Jesus, Jae, you scare me. Did you have fun? He repeated. Plenty, Dami answered, kicking the door shut with her foot. She walked into the room, knowing the movement hiked her dress higher up her thigh. The ambassador's son is quite charming. He bought me a drink. We danced. Crack. The sound of glass shattering was loud in the quiet room. Dami froze. She flipped the light switch. Jae was sitting there, his hand clenched into a fist. The whiskey tumbler he had been holding was now dust. Shards of glass were embedded in his palm. Blood, bright red and stark, dripped from his hand onto the pristine white carpet. "You're bleeding," she gasped, the anger vanishing instantly. She dropped her heels and rushed toward him. "Stay there." His voice broke on the words. She ignored him. She always ignored him. She knelt between his legs, taking his large, calloused hand in hers. She began to carefully pick out the shards of glass. "Is this you being jealous, dear mafia husband?" she asked softly, her eyes focused on his wound. "I don't get jealous," he muttered, looking away. "Liar." She looked up at him. "You're jealous that another man made me laugh. You're jealous that another man might have touched me." He whipped his head toward her then. His eyes were blazing with a fire that could consume the world. "Did he?" The question was sharp. Dangerous. "Did he touch you?" Dami paused. Would it matter if he did? Jae stood up, pulling her up with him. He backed her against the wet bar, his bloody hand slamming onto the counter beside her head, trapping her again. "Answer me, Dami." Dami giggled, the sound nervous and breathless. "No, he didn't touch me." She tilted her head, her lips inches from his. "But you want it, don't you? You want to touch me so badly it's driving you insane. You don't know what I want. I know exactly what you want." She stepped closer, pressing her chest against his. "I know you touch yourself thinking about me," she whispered. "I know you groan my name in the shower when you engage with your own desire. I know you stand outside my door at night, like a starving man outside a feast. So why are you starving, Jae, when I am right here, ready to feed you?" His control shattered. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision. He kissed her like he was dying, like she was the last breath of air in a drowning world. His uninjured hand tangled in her braids, tilting her head back to deepen the kiss. Dami moaned into his mouth, finally getting what she had been chasing for weeks. His tongue swept into her mouth, demanding, claiming. Her hands went to his belt, fumbling with the buckle. But just as the metal clicked open, he pulled away. He tore his mouth from hers, gasping for air, his chest heaving. "No," he panted, backing away. "No, not like this. I'm not in control." The rejection stung worse than a slap. Dami stared at him, her lips swollen, her body aching. "Coward!" She slapped him. Hard. It split his lip. He caught her wrist before she could do it again, pulling her violently against his chest. "Careful, wife," he warned, his eyes dark. "I'm trying to be honorable. I don't want you to be honorable." She screamed. "I want you to keep your promise. The one about destroying me until I can't walk." He stared at her for a long moment, the conflict raging in his eyes. Then he released her wrist and walked away, leaving her panting, frustrated, and alone in the living room. For 4 days after that rejection, Dami went nuclear. She didn't just push the boundaries, she set them on fire. She brought men home, not to the bedroom. She wasn't unfaithful, but she filled the penthouse with business associates, loud artists from the Gangnam district, anyone who would make Jae's eye twitch. She didn't let them pass the foyer, but Jae didn't know that. She laughed too loud at their jokes. She danced too close to the music. She made sure the door to his study was open so he could see everything. Then came the silence. She stopped wearing underwear. It was a silent, invisible rebellion, but it was effective. The silk pants she wore around the house, the sundresses, the thin fabrics, they draped differently. He noticed. Oh God, he noticed. His eyes would track her movements across the room, darkening when she bent over to pick up a magazine, when she stretched to reach a high shelf, when she sat on the sofa with her legs crossed. The air between them became so thick with tension it felt like walking through water. One evening, she was in the kitchen, attempting to cook. She couldn't cook to save her life. She was burning scallions, but that wasn't the point. She was wearing one of his white dress shirts and nothing else. She hummed to herself, swaying her hips to a silent rhythm, when she felt the temperature in the room drop. She felt him behind her before she saw him. "What are you doing?" His voice was strained, tight like a piano wire about to snap. Making dinner? Dami chirped, not turning around. You can't cook, Dami. The kitchen smells like charcoal. I can learn. You're not wearing. He cut himself off, taking a shaky, ragged breath. Dami turned slowly, the spatula in her hand, the oversized shirt gaping open just enough to show the curve of her cleavage. Not wearing what, Jae? His eyes dropped. They traveled down the length of his own shirt on her body, stopping where the hem ended mid-thigh, leaving her long, dark legs completely bare. Then his eyes snapped back up to hers. This has to stop. What has to stop? This. He gestured aggressively between them. This game you're playing. This psychological warfare. I'm not playing anything. She turned back to the stove, feigning innocence. I'm just living my life. If you have a problem with it. He spun her around. He moved so fast the air rushed past her. He pressed her backward against the marble island, the cool stone biting into her lower back. You're trying to seduce me, he growled. Is it working? She whispered. You know it is. His hands gripped the edge of the counter on either side of her hips, his knuckles white with the force of his restraint. Every day, walking around like you don't know what you do to me, like you don't know I'm going insane. Then do something about it, Jae. I can't. Why? Because He stopped, his jaw clenching so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. Because if I start, Dami, I will never stop. I will become the monster everyone thinks I am. I will consume you. Maybe I want a monster. He laughed, dark and bitter. You don't know what you are asking for. Then show me. For a moment, she thought he would. His hand rose from the counter to her throat, his thumb pressing against her racing pulse. His other hand gripped her hip, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. She could feel him hard against her stomach, could see the raw lust in his eyes. Ring, ring. His phone shattered the moment. Business. Always business. Jae froze. He closed his eyes, cursing silently in Korean. He stepped away from her, answering the phone in rapid, angry tones, but his eyes never left hers. He backed out of the kitchen, but the promise remained in his gaze. Soon, the breaking point came the next night. Dami had gone to an art gallery opening in Itaewon despite his explicit orders to stay home. There had been threats, he said, rival factions moving in. Danger, he said. She had gone anyway. She wore the red dress, the one that made him crazy, the one with the low back and the high slit. When she came home, the penthouse was pitch black. You never listen. She turned to find him stepping out of the shadows. And for the first time since their marriage, she felt a flicker of genuine fear. Not of violence, but of the sheer intensity radiating off him. I told you not to go, he said, walking toward her. You're not my father, she shot back, dropping her purse. I am your husband. Same difference in this house. He moved faster than she could track. He backed her against the wall near the entrance. Do you know what could have happened to you tonight? But it didn't. That was when she noticed the gun in his hand. He brandished it, not at her, but in the space between them. Do you know how many people I had to kill tonight to ensure it didn't? Why are you so stubborn? I should lock you up in this penthouse, he roared. She slapped him then. Hard. Harder than the first time. It split his lip again, and we are back to the beginning. The gun pressed against Dami's spine as Jae's body caged her against the wall. His breath was hot against her neck. Blood from his split lip dripped onto her bare shoulder. You never listen, Jae growled, his free hand tangling in her hair, pulling her head back to expose her throat. I told you not to leave. I told you it wasn't safe. And I told you, she hissed, grinding back against him just to feel him harden, just to prove her point, that I am not your prisoner. The gun traced down her spine, cold metal against burning skin. You're my wife. Same thing, isn't it? He spun her around, slamming her back against the wall. The gun was now pressed under her chin. His eyes were black with rage and something else, something that made her thighs clench. 3 months of marriage. 3 months of this violent dance. I should kill you, he whispered, his thumb brushing over her bottom lip. You're going to get yourself killed anyway with your stubbornness. Then do it. She opened her mouth and took his thumb in, sucking it. She watched his control fracture as she did. Or love me. But make a choice, dear mafia husband. Because I'm tired of this game. No. Why not? She demanded, spitting his thumb out. Because I had men following you. He roared, slamming his hand beside her head. Because I've had men following you every single day since our wedding. Do you know what it cost me to keep them from reporting back every time you let another man touch you? Every time you smiled at someone who wasn't me? Dami blinked, stunned. Why do you care? Why do I care? He laughed, the sound unhinged. Are you really that blind? You said you didn't want me. Elite. The admission came out ragged, torn from his throat. Okay, Elite. I have wanted you since the moment you walked down that aisle looking like every sin I have ever wanted to commit. I have wanted you every morning when you do your yoga in those tiny shorts. I have wanted you every night when I hear you touching yourself through the wall, moaning my name like you don't know I can hear you. Her breath caught in her throat. You could hear everything? His mouth was at her ear now, his voice a low vibration. Every whimper, every gasp, every time you came thinking about me. Just like you can hear me. Then why, Jae? Why did you push me away? Because I'm trying to protect you. The words exploded out of him. From this life. From my enemies. From me. Because if I claim you, Dami, if I really claim you, there's no going back. You become a target. You become mine forever. And I am selfish enough that once I have you, I will never, ever let you go. What if I don't want to be let go? He pulled back to look at her, something vulnerable flickering in his dark eyes. Dami couldn't wait for him to make up his mind anymore. She went on her tiptoes and kissed him. He returned it without hesitation. The gun dropped to the floor with a heavy thud. His arms wrapped around her, crushing her to him, their tongues tangling together in a desperate rhythm. When they broke apart, breathless, she whispered against his lips, I'm already a target. I'm already yours. The only question is whether you are brave enough to be mine. In reply, he swept her up into his arms, carrying her to the master bedroom. He laid her on the black silk sheets like an offering. His hands shook as he undressed her, revealing her piece by piece, his eyes worshipping every inch of dark skin revealed. I'm going to ruin you, he warned, his teeth grazing her inner thigh. Promise? What happened next was 3 months of tension exploding into desperate need. He took her apart. He worshipped her body with his mouth, his fingers, making her come twice before finally pressing inside her. The stretch, the fullness, the way he groaned her name against her neck. It was everything. More, she gasped, her nails raking down his back, leaving red welts. Be polite, wifey, Jae rasped, grabbing her hips to anchor her. Beg for it. Tell me who you belong to. Yours, she sobbed. I'm yours, Jae. You are damn right you are. He took her with a ferocity that bordered on violence, driving into her until she was screaming his name, until the walls of the penthouse echoed with their pleasure. They didn't leave the bed for hours. Every position, every surface, every filthy promise he'd made in the hallway became reality. When dawn broke through the windows, Dami was covered in bruises and bite marks, her body aching in the most delicious ways. Mine, he murmured, tracing a mark on her neck with his finger. Yours, she agreed. Then she bit his shoulder, hard enough to leave her own mark. And you are mine. Always. But always is never calm when you're married to a Mafia Don. Always is usually interrupted by gunshots. The attack came 3 days later. They were at a charity gala. He had begged her not to attend. She'd gone anyway, stubborn to the end, wanting to show the world she was his wife. She nearly died for it. The ballroom was in chaos. Smoke filled the air. Debris littered the floor. Jae sat on the floor of the destroyed ballroom, cradling Dami in his lap. His tuxedo was ruined, soaked in the blood of the men he had just slaughtered to get to her. He checked her over frantically, arms, legs, head. She was shaken, scraped, but alive. Your cousin, Dami coughed, wiping dust from her face. He wanted to kill me? Jae nodded, fury swirling on his face like a storm. He thinks you make me weak. He thinks having a wife, having someone to love, is a liability. He said every weakness has to be eliminated from a syndicate. Do I make you weak? She asked quietly. Jae stopped wiping the blood from his hands. He looked at her. Yes. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing over her high cheekbone. You make me terrified. You make me careless. and I would choose that weakness over any strength in the world. But what if he comes for us again? No. The word was final. Deadly. He won't. Dami understood, even without him saying it. Her husband was the dangerous Mafia Don, after all. His cousin was already dead. Does that frighten you? He asked. That I killed my own blood for you? No. She rose on her knees, pressing her forehead to his. It should, but it doesn't. Why? Because I would do the same for you. He kissed her then, soft and desperate, tasting like blood and promises. Let's go home. In the car, his hand was possessive on her thigh, his touch reigniting the fire that never really died between them. By the time they reached the penthouse, she was climbing into his lap before the elevator doors even closed, her dress hiked up, his hands everywhere. Someone could see. She gasped as he kissed down her throat. Let them, he growled against her skin. Let everyone know you are mine. They barely made it inside. I love you, she gasped as she shattered around him against the hallway wall. The word surprised them both. He stilled, pulling back to look at her, his eyes searching hers for the truth. Say it again. I love you, Jae. My monster. My enemy. My husband. I love you too, he said, his voice thick with emotion. More than my empire. More than my life. More than my soul. Prove it. His smile was wicked. Every day, for the rest of our lives. Morning came again. They stood on the balcony. The sprawling city of Seoul spread out before them like a kingdom of glass and steel. Dami was wearing his shirt again. Jae stood behind her, his arms wrapped tight around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. Any regrets? Jae asked quietly. Just one. His body tensed against hers. What? I should have slapped you harder that first time. Maybe we would have figured this out sooner. His laugh was rich, dark, everything she loved about him. You can slap me anytime you want, wife. Just know there will be consequences. Careful. I might take you up on that. I'm counting on it. He turned her in his arms, the morning sun painting her dark skin gold. So what now? Now. He lifted her effortlessly onto the balcony railing. Dami gasped, clutching his shoulders, looking down at the dizzying drop, then back at him. He stepped between her thighs, spreading them wide. Now, he said, I'm going to love my wife on this balcony where all of Seoul can see who you belong to. Here, anyone could see. That is the point. His hands pushed the shirt up. Let them see. Let them know that the stubborn woman who never listens, who drives me insane, who nearly gets herself killed daily. Let them know she is mine. You're insane, she breathed. You'll ruin me. You made me that way, and you wanted me to ruin you. You wanted me to destroy you until you cannot walk again. Jae, she'll give me permission, he commanded, his fingers already finding her wet heat. Say yes, Dami. Yes. She gasped as he claimed her there, high above the city he ruled. Dami thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. An arranged marriage between enemies. 3 months of violent foreplay disguised as hatred. And a love born from stubbornness and spite. She'd married the devil himself thinking it was a prison sentence. Instead, she found a man who would burn the world for her. And she would burn it right back for him. If you made it to the end, drop a comment with the word stubborn below. Tell me, do you think Jae is too possessive? Or is he just right? Because these two are far from done driving each other crazy. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Afro-Korean Soul Tales for more dark romances that leave you breathless and desperate. Until next time, lovers, stay stubborn, stay dangerous, and never, ever listen to orders. I love you all so much.